Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Art Bites. Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to wait just one moment here. I'm watching that participant number climb. And I will say good evening, Jennifer. How are you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's beautiful here today where I am. I'm in North Carolina, and I have kind of that afternoon sun coming through my windows. So it's beautiful. I also got my second dose of the vaccine today. So, I'm just about wrapping that up.
That's
How about
very
you?
exciting. Very exciting. Yes, I'm doing excellent as well. The sunshine works wonders. And the prospect of a wonderful dish that you're going to make tonight has lifted my spirits. So it is all good. As you know, Jennifer, I'm here in New Jersey and we just had beautiful weather today. So many things to be grateful for. And with the beautiful weather, with the beautiful springtime weather, I get thinking more about the fresh produce and the wonderful farms we have up here, as I'm sure you all have wonderful farms in North Carolina as well. And I'm excited to see what we're going to be making tonight. You want to tell us a little bit about what our dish is?
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited about all the spring veggies and stuff coming out too. And of course, this time of year, you always see bundles of asparagus in the grocery store. And I think some people maybe, everybody has their ideas about asparagus, but it always looks amazing to me when it's fresh, and especially that really great pencil thin asparagus, some of which we have right here. I actually have a neighbor who grows asparagus in their backyard, which is a pretty big undertaking. I don't know if you're familiar with how asparagus grows, but it has to be planted very, very deep. Like, I believe it's like something like, I want to say 6 feet. I could be wrong about that, but I think you're supposed to bury it essentially. And that it takes about 3 years to get like a real stalk of asparagus, like, pinky sized asparagus. So you have to be dedicated to do that. Yeah, so what we're going to make tonight is the green curry asparagus bisque. And we're going to put frizzled leeks on the top of that. And if you're not sure what frizzled is in this context, it's fried, but you'll see they kind of puff up a little bit as they're frying, and then they're just these crunchy strings. It's fancy onion rings, essentially. They're not breaded at all, but they're really delicious, and they make a great accompaniment to the soup. And the bisque itself is, this is a little different take on an asparagus bisque. Usually it's got cream and butter and maybe some chives or something in it, and a lot of people keep it pretty simple. This one I wanted to tweak just a little bit. It's got a little bit of a Thai influence with the green curry in it and the coconut milk, which is awesome. And what's really fabulous about this recipe is that it can be totally vegan. The only thing that you would need to replace that would be different from what I'm doing tonight is chicken stock. You would want to put vegetable stock, but all of that is super easy to put together, and I think it'll be great. You ready to get started?
Oh, that's exciting. Yes. And just because I've seen the number go up, I just want to say one more time, welcome this evening, everyone, to Art Bites. This is our fifth Art Bites in the series, so our fifth episode. And we have back with us tonight, Jennifer Armstrong Hicks, who is our culinary curator. Tonight, as she mentioned, she is going to be whipping up asparagus bisque soup. And I want to kind of draw our attention to this beautiful work of art we have on the screen, which was your inspiration for tonight's meal, right, Jennifer?
Right. Yeah, this bracelet, which is fabulous, is by an artist named Lindly Haunani. And she is very well known in the Polymer Clay art world, and just in the art world in general. She has made some beautiful work over the years. She kind of discovered polymer clay essentially in around 1988. So she's been doing it for quite a while. As you can see, she's mastered a lot of really difficult techniques if you've ever played with polymer clay. And you guys just had a workshop a week or so ago, right? Is that right?
We sure did. Yes, we had about 12 different participants who came and attended an online virtual polymer clay workshop. It was a lot of fun. And these colors here, it's
gorgeous.
Such a fun medium. Yeah, such an interesting, polymer clay. I think you and I were talking about this, Jennifer, just the other day, is it's a clay that you can actually, it's very friendly for in the home. It's very friendly for, using with children, because it's a clay you can bake in the oven. So while using something like porcelain or, red clay from the earth, you need to fire it at super high temperatures in a kiln. It's really incredible to use something like polymer clay because it's an oil-based clay and it has this sort of plasticity to it. You can just bake it in the oven. So you and I were kind of joking around about this bracelet was baked in the oven, just like you might do with some actual asparagus.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you could roast some asparagus and put it in this soup as well. So yeah, my daughter does a lot of work with polymer clay too, and I've toyed around with it a little bit. It's such a low pressure art, but clearly people take it to the greatest lengths, just like Lindly did. So she, something else that's really cool about her food related is that she has always, she said she's always played with her food, and that she has been a waitress, or she was a waitress for over 20 years at a Washington, D.C. restaurant that was like a 100-year-old restaurant. So she is not unfamiliar with ingredients like this. I imagine her walking through the back of the kitchen and watching prep cooks working on, some asparagus dish there. So I think this one makes total sense for her based on her other profession. But if you're ready, I'll go ahead and kind of launch into some of the recipe. You ready?
Yes, our mouths are watering. I think we're ready to figure out how to make this delicious dish ourselves.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to kind of move over here. So if I look away from the camera, it's because I'm looking down. Don't want to cut off any fingers while we're doing our thing. So some of the ingredients, I'm going to go ahead and get the stove going too. We are going to saute some onions that I've already cut up.
And what are we preheating our oven to tonight?
Well, I am just doing kind of medium-high heat. Everything's done on the stove, so it's pretty great. This, I don't know if you've seen before, if you've worked with asparagus, a lot of people talk about, you and I were talking about this, how you can bend asparagus and it'll have a natural, this one must not be super, there it is. It'll have a natural snapping point. And I would say that's probably an important trick to use when you're just having spears. But because we're pureeing this, it's not quite as important. I may cut off the very end, just that little kind of woody bit right at the end, but we want to keep as much of our asparagus as we can. So probably what we'll do, I'm going to take these in some little bunches. I'm going to just trim off a chunk of the ends, and I compost. So I'm just going to kind of stick them over here. And then I'm going to cut it into just some little chunks, something manageable to stir in a pot, because we are going to have to stir it in a minute. So I'm going to cut this up, and the recipe calls for about a pound or so. Sometimes that's a bunch, but it depends on, and by a bunch, I mean a bundle that you buy at the store. Sometimes that'll be a pound, but just kind of, you can weigh it while you're at the store or eyeball it. And I bought two bundles just to make sure I had plenty. And so we're going to chop this up. I also have some garlic chopped, minced. Nothing has to be very fine for this. That's another thing that's great about it. Because you're pureeing, you don't have to get too particular with your chopping. A little bit. And something that I added to this that kind of gives it a little bit of body is some Yukon Gold potato. So I've already chopped that up and it's ready to go in when we start to cook everything together. And let me see what else. The green curry paste is an important, really important component of this one. And what we're going to do with that is kind of toast it up a little bit So we're going to saute our onions and garlic, and then we'll add the green curry paste and kind of like let that saute a little bit too. Green curry, I'm going to kind of take you with me. So green curry is one of the milder Thai curries, and it is really, it's given its greenness by basil, some coriander or cilantro, and some kaffir lime leaves. So that's where the green part comes from. Whereas with other curries, there are some other components that make it green. So here we go. I think we're hot enough over here. You need a little bit of olive oil. We're just going to put a little bit of extra virgin olive oil in the pan.
Can you tilt us up just a little bit?
Well?
Yeah, just tilt us up just a smidge.
Yeah.
We'll see there you go. Perfect.
Perfect. Great. I love that sound. That's one of my favorite sounds in the world. Onions sit in the pan. So we're going to give that a little bit of a saute.
And if anything seems like you want to jot it down, or you feel like we're moving quickly, which you're moving at a great pace, Jennifer, but I just wanted to remind everyone that in the chat, I have put in the recipe for you all. So feel free to click on that link. It'll have a printout of ingredients and method as we're moving through.
I may speed through this a little bit because I don't want to take too long. So you want to saute the onions until they get, a little translucent. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit. This is pretty standard soup making, procedure. If you've ever made a soup before, so many soups start with onions and garlic. Two of my favorite things.
I always skip that step because my husband hates onions. So if any recipe starts out with saute the onion, I just move right past that step and go right into the next step.
Well, let me recommend something, because onions, like a lot of people say that they think they don't like onions, and maybe they don't, or maybe they're allergic, which is a different thing. But some people think they don't like them, but if they're pureed, like this is a great soup because they're in there, but you don't know that, it's pureed. You don't see it. There's no texture. So
if he didn't see them, he would be fine. Yeah. Let us know in the chat how you feel about onions. Let us know in the comments. Do you like onions? Do you steer away from them? Or if you don't see them, you're fine. And we had one question before you put in your green curry paste. Is there a brand you recommend of green curry paste?
This one, it's fun. You can see I just labeled it, hand labeled it, because I guess I lost my label for it, or I took it off. But you can, I don't have a very specific brand. You can get it at, in the international area of pretty much any grocery store. But if you have an Asian market that's close to you, you might find even better quality, options. I would try that. I love my local Asian market, so that's a good choice. All right, I'm going to throw this in here. So it calls for a tablespoon. I'm gonna kind of eyeball it because I know how to eyeball a tablespoon. So we're just gonna kind of toast that. Oh my gosh, this is what's difficult about virtual. You can't smell what's happening here, but it smells amazing.
While we're sauteing, Jennifer, I did want to ask if it might be a good time to sort of quiz our audience about popular vegetables and which are the most popular in the US. What do you think?
Let's do it.
So asparagus is the 20th most purchased vegetable in the US. And we wanted to hear from you all who are joining us tonight. And you can let us know also on social media by just writing in the comments, which of these other green vegetables do you think is the most purchased? Would it be green beans, cucumbers, broccoli, or celery? So do you think green beans, cucumbers, broccoli, or celery? I see we have a color theme here with the green vegetables, all in the asparagus color family.
Right. Yeah, and I'll tell you really quick, I threw something in here. These are the Yukon Gold potatoes that I've added. Just a few, it's like 2 of them chopped up, and they're going to cook once we put the liquid in. So they're raw right now, but we're going to cook everything together.
And it looks like you have to keep stirring it potentially to keep those potatoes from sticking, I imagine.
Yeah, and it's mostly to keep you don't want that curry to burn. So it's a good idea to just kind of keep moving it a little bit. But I'm about to deglaze the pan with this chicken stock. And again, if you prefer to make this vegan, just make this vegetable stock. Put that
I love options like that, especially because sometimes I only have, a vegetable stock on hand.
Right. Yeah. And recently, this is such a great recipe for people that are doing any kind of like elimination diet or a thing like that. I did the Whole30 recently, and this was a perfect item for that because it doesn't use any dairy. It doesn't have any butter in it. So it's actually a really great combo for that. So we're going to bring this up to a boil. And while that's kind of starting to get hot, I'm going to add the coconut milk, and it's just 1 whole can. When we were talking about brands, this is a brand that I like, this Native Forest. I like this particular one because it doesn't have any guar gum. So the only thing that's in here is like coconut and water, I think. Yeah. Organic coconut milk and filtered water. So that's awesome. Whoop, just got a little bit of mess on here.
It looks like our results are in, and the majority have chosen broccoli as their other most purchased green. They nailed vegetable.
It. As far as green vegetables, that's the one.
As a kid, I think green beans were probably the one most, in the 90s, early thousands. I feel like green beans were our go-to.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that green beans weren't higher up on that list. I thought they would be pretty much, the next in line or, near the top, but apparently they're a little bit further down.
And Patricia in the chat mentions that she, this past winter, just started switching over to using vegetable stock in place of chicken stock and found that it had more layered, richer taste. So excellent.
Oh, I wonder if she makes her own stock. If she makes her own stock, then you can really get some good flavors in there. That's the way to go. Maybe she can let us know if she does that. Yeah, one thing that I always like for a vegetable stock is like a grilled or seared, like a broiled onion in there. That adds such a rich flavor. Somehow there's a theme with onions in a lot of the things that I do. So now I'm worried about, your partner, and it's just
he'll be okay. It's something we're working through. He used to not like mushrooms too, but we've worked through it. So
that's a big one. Actually, I'm surprised that he's into mushrooms now, but not onions. I mean, that's, onions are kind of a gateway veggie. So,
Yes, mushrooms are very polarizing as well as onions. Oh, and Sanson says onions have more antioxidants, so might add some of those health benefits.
They're so good. All right. So real quick, I wanted to do another thing while we're waiting, which is to go ahead and frizzle the leeks. So here are our leeks. They are so pretty because they have this cool, gradation of color, from one end to the other. That's always one of my favorites. So what I did here when I cut them was I just, you may or may not know that leeks, sometimes they gather a lot of dirt in the field. So you really have to wash them well. But then I just julienne them and just made really fine strips going kind of vertically down the leek instead of cutting circles. A lot of people cut circles when they're cooking with them. So this is how you want to have them cut. And I have some coconut oil here that is pretty hot over on this side. You have to be really careful with this because they will sizzle up really, really fast, which is what we want. So I'm going to drop a few in, and we just do this in batches. Uh-oh. Hold on. Making a mess. That did sizzle up. It did just what I said.
It will sizzle. It will
just
sizzle.
Too much.
Oh, but just look at them. They're getting so thin and crispy.
Yes, they're gorgeous. So here, I'll show you back here what we've got.
Oh my goodness, this looks delicious. You know, I think we're gonna let the kids and maybe the hubs clean up tonight. What do you think?
Totally, I'm into that. And I'm gonna turn that down a little bit. Hopefully we won't light anything on fire. Oh, there goes my fire alarm though. Always fun.
That's okay. This is exactly what happens when you're using coconut oil.
Hang on.
While we're sizzling leeks, I have another poll for everyone. Great. About asparagus, which is kind of a fun one. It's about which of these locations do you think is the self-proclaimed asparagus capital of the world? So key here being self-proclaimed.
Right.
Who do you think? We've got Beijing, China, Fresno, California, Lima, Peru, or Hart, Michigan. So which of these four do you think? You can use our poll here on Zoom or on social media. Please just write in the chat below. Give us in the comments. Let us know. Do you think it's Beijing, China, Fresno, California, Lima, Peru, or Hart, Michigan? So if you know a little bit about maybe where asparagus grow in what best climate, maybe you'll be able to maybe guess this one, or maybe not. It might be a trick question. Who knows?
All right.
Oh, look at those leeks. Are you salting them? I see a little salt going on them.
Yeah, I just put a little bit of salt. And usually when you make the batches, you can just put a little bit of salt in there. Most of it falls to the bottom, but a little bit will stick on there. And so that's perfect. That's what you want.
Looks
and
so
then
yummy.
You can see that our mixture is kind of boiling away here, which is fabulous. We want it to be cooking those potatoes because those do take a little bit of a second longer. And you notice I haven't put the asparagus in there yet. I didn't really want to push that too far because we want to kind of retain our greenness. And as you know, asparagus can get a little mushy sometimes if we're not careful. So we wanted to give it an extra minute or two with the potatoes in there.
Do you have a certain amount of time you like to let it simmer for? Or do you kind of eyeball when the potatoes start to sort of fall apart and get pretty cooked?
Exactly that. I eyeball it. And the cool thing about this soup is that it is really pretty fast to make. It doesn't take long at all. So really it's just as long as it takes for the potatoes to cook and then puree it. So I think, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Usually I would give it, I think we may cut it a little bit earlier than that, but they should still be pretty well cooked. And so we've got our leeks done. I'm going to go ahead and add the asparagus since they've kind of had a little bit of a head start now.
And speaking of asparagus, our results are in, and it looks like our viewers have chosen Hart, Michigan as the self-proclaimed asparagus capital of the world.
They figured it out.
That is the right answer.
Good job.
I did not know that before tonight. So I'm wildly impressed that our viewers tonight are so up on their asparagus knowledge and their Michigan knowledge.
I am too. That's pretty amazing, actually. I had no idea. I have not had the pleasure of visiting Michigan yet, so I didn't realize that they would have the sort of climate that made sense for that. But I guess asparagus love it there. Maybe they like a little bit colder climate. So I love that.
So for this soup, Jennifer, would you say that you can kind of scale it up or down depending on, like, if you wanted to do a larger batch, you could maybe get out, a bigger Dutch oven or a bigger crock pot and do a bigger batch. And if you maybe only need a little bit, you could scale it down. Does it scale pretty well, this recipe?
It does. Yeah, I would say, yeah, it and it's pretty straightforward as far as the ingredients go. I mean, a lot of it is, you use a whole can of coconut milk, so you could double it really easily. And And this probably, I think that we said, I'm trying to remember in the recipe, I think I said that it would serve about 6 to 8 people. So it depends on how much you're into asparagus, of course. But you could double it easily if you had a crowd and wanted to feed everybody. And something else to mention, I wish I had access to these right now because they would be so beautiful. It's a garnish that I frequently use on an asparagus soup, and it is chive blossoms, and they're so beautiful. They're little tiny purple flowers. Usually when you, if you grow chives, you can see the flower stalks come up, and it has probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 little blooms on the top of each one, and they snip off really easily. They taste just like chives. They don't taste any differently, but they're just so pretty. They're these delicate little purple flowers. So if you have those growing in your garden or you see them, they would be a perfect garnish for this. Something about that purple and green, just like Lindley's bracelet, has the purple and green, and asparagus usually has a little bit of purple on it as well. So I think that would be a great kind of color. If we're talking about color and art, that would be a good combination there.
That's a great idea. Anna has asked in the comments, can you fry the leeks in the oven? So instead of doing the coconut oil, could you bake them in the oven for a little while?
Or just on the stovetop, like I did. You just let them overflow and then you're good to go. No, you could bake them. I don't think they would have the same quality, but if I were to try to bake them, what I would probably do is toss them in some olive oil, lay them out as much as a single layer as you can, and do that at like maybe 400 or 425 and keep a really close eye on it. That's probably what I would do. I don't know if they'll get quite as crispy, but they may. They would in the oven have a little more of a tendency to burn. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that. But that's a really good question. I think that would work. All right, so let's have a look at the bubbling brew over here. So I'm just going to, I usually either use a fork or a paring knife to kind of check potatoes. Let's see. Yeah, those are breaking apart. So that looks like that would work great.
And I see you cut them small too, so that I guess how you dice your potato might also inform how long you boil.
Yeah, for sure. The smaller, the better, definitely in that case. And I'm going to turn this over here just a little bit. Let's see if you can see this. And let's see if I can find a good ladle. So at this point, you really want to be careful when you're pureeing anything that's hot. I'm doing this hot. You could certainly let this cool off and it would be fine. You can always puree it and then put it back in the pot and return it to the stove to warm it back up. That works totally fine. So don't feel like you have to risk it hot, but definitely please be careful as you're preparing anything that's been boiling on the stove. So I'm going to vent that just a little bit, and this is going to be a little noisy. So you may want to, if you want to ask about maybe something that would go great with this, if you want to eat something maybe with your soup, what do you think?
That sounds great. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you would pair your asparagus bisque with. So you've got some options here on the screen. Which of these sandwiches do you think would pair best with asparagus bisque? We'll give you a minute to choose your selection while we puree up our bisque.
Yeah, here comes the noise. You ready?
That's not too bad at all. Would you do the chèvre panini, a delicate curried chicken salad, jabon and butter on a French baguette? Or are you a purist and you prefer to have your bisque alone on its own?
Something else that I do, and this is included in the recipe, you can omit it, but I like to add it for a couple of reasons. I add just a little bit of fresh spinach. I use baby spinach. I've got it right here. And I put it in while it's still hot and while I'm pureeing it. And it adds, obviously, it adds the good things that spinach does vitamin-wise, but it also retains a lot of your color, which is great. It kind of gives that color a little bit of a boost, especially if you've been cooking it for a while. So I am going to continue to puree this for a little bit longer.
It's taking on a beautiful green color. So we've got I think our results are in for the sandwich pairings, the sandwich choices, if you will.
Ooh.
And it looks like the winner, but there are no winners because really everyone is entitled to a wonderful soup and bisque or bisque and sandwich pairing. But it looks like the winner for tonight's crowd is the delicate curried chicken salad finger sandwich, which did call out to me as well because of that green curry that you put in the asparagus. I think would be a beautiful pairing. But tonight's viewers are, all have chosen at least one. So we've got a purist amongst us. We have someone who would love to do the chèvre panini and another guest who would be interested in the jabon and butter on a French baguette. I think all sound delicious.
Yeah, I would want like a sampler of that pretty much. I definitely want some of each, but I would probably go straight for the panini. I automatically, yes, you could serve this cold in the summer, Anna. That would be awesome, actually. Yeah, I would definitely go for the panini because I like that, I like that crunchy hot sandwich kind of situation. So speaking of cold, like this is perfect cold. And you could always do like a creme fraiche drizzle on top or something like that. It'd be beautiful. That's a really good idea.
So tell me a little bit about this straining technique. I see you're working your ladle there. Is that helping push through the liquid?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm just using it's a fine sieve, and this is just a tiny ladle, but it's a metal ladle, and it really does. It makes it go faster because if you just pour it in there and let it sit, it's not going anywhere. You'd have to wait forever. And this actually does get through some of that texture, the potatoes and the asparagus, but it leaves the fiber behind. And you can see, it makes this like pulp. But it really does get through all the good stuff. So you're really not missing much. I get pretty much most of it out of there. It's about a quarter of a cup or so of kind of business left behind.
Have you ever tried using the pulp to make anything, Jennifer? Have you ever baked a bread or a muffin with it or used it for something else?
I have not, but that's a great idea. I think that could really work. A bread, that I can see how doing something like that could be pretty cool. It'd be interesting to try it. Let me know, people, if you do decide to do that. So I'm kind of scraping off the last little bit of that good stuff at the bottom. And I am going to, it's so pretty. So I'm going to season this. We didn't season it while it was on the stove. You could have if you wanted to, but I'm going to put a little bit of salt. And if you know me, I always throw salt over my shoulder. Our chefs have their little things, and that's my good luck charm. And then this is just some fresh cracked pepper. I like this particular soup. I really like it when it's a little bit spicy, or I like to have a spice component to it. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and pour it in this little dish. Here we go. So we can plate it. So I would get it in our dish. And then there are a couple of different things that I listed on the recipe that you could do. I'm going to put a little bit more pepper on top because that looks good. You could put fresh chèvre on top, or feta. You could do a drizzle of some kind of crema. I love this chili onion crunch stuff. Here, I'll show you. It's from Trader Joe's. If you've watched this before, you know I love Trader Joe's. I use them a lot. But this stuff is like crunchy onions mixed with chili peppers and oil, and it's just like the prettiest, yummiest, spiciest stuff. So a little bit of that, and then a little tiny bit more of olive oil. Let's see if I can get a little drizzle going. That always looks sweet on top. And then here they are, our frizzled leeks. So you just make like a little nest right on the top. And then
gorgeous.
You've got your soup ready to go. So,
oh my goodness. And the red, the chili, with the red and the green, we've got complementary colors happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get a bite and let us know what you think. Okay. We're all going to eat vicariously.
So I thought it was going to be like burning hot, but it's not. I do have to be careful. If I get a big mouthful of that chili stuff, I will start to sweat. So there's that.
We had one question in the chat about not straining, still pureeing, not straining. Could you skip the straining? And then Anna, so that was from Judith. And then Anna asks, could you even just leave the chunks in? So maybe taking it off the stove and having a chunky soup. Is that an option? Have you played around with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you do decide to leave it completely chunky, like not at all pureed, I would chop everything a lot smaller. And I think that one of the things about, a bisque naturally is smooth. I mean, that's part of what it is. And I mean, that's what's so delicate about this, especially if you're going to have it cold, like we talked about before. I would say this is probably your best kind of texture. But if you, this is what it looks like, pureed but not strained, that would be totally fine. It's all the texture that you're comfortable with. So I think, this is obviously a more kind of refined version of that, but you don't have to go to that length. Also, sometimes you can, if you have a really, really good blender, you can puree it and it'll be almost totally smooth. So you might not have to strain it. But asparagus is a little bit fibrous. So if you have like very fresh, really young asparagus, and if you do maybe snap it kind of the way we talked about in the beginning, and you're not as worried about those other ends, or you can use those for something else, then that might work out really well for you. So yeah, there are a lot of options with this one. I think it's a pretty cool recipe.
Very versatile recipe, Jennifer. This has been incredible. Thank you so much for taking us through this recipe and for being inspired by the Newark Museum of Art collection. We always love that. We love being able to feature some of our fun and, dare I say, whimsical works like our asparagus bracelet that we saw earlier. Before we go, because we are coming near the end of our time tonight, I wanted to let everyone know about next month's show. So Art Bites is coming back on May 11th. And can you just give us a little sneak on what we're going to make next time?
Yeah, next time we're inspired by this beautiful piece that's strawberry related. And we are going to make a panna cotta, which is kind of it's sort of like a custard, but no eggs. And it's so delicious. It's going to be a honey vanilla bean panna cotta with a strawberry spoon sweet. And we'll get to use local strawberries. I hope by that time you guys have some strawberries that are into season up there that you can go pick. We usually go pick them every year because we can, and they're so much better when they're super fresh like that. So that's next week, or not next week, next month. That'll be fun.
That sounds incredible. So everyone mark your calendars. Our next Art Bites is coming up on May 11th. As Jennifer mentioned, a honey vanilla panna cotta with strawberries. And one of those ingredients may or may not be in the work of art that we're going to be looking at. So get excited about what work we're going to be showcasing. And then lastly, this Saturday, as a part of our Community Day Cherry Blossom Festival, we are very, very excited to have you back, Jennifer, to host Sugar Showdown. So do not miss Do not miss this Saturday, 1 p.m. Sugar Showdown. We can put a link in the comments here in the chat for you to sign up on Eventbrite. We have been so thrilled to have you here tonight, Jennifer, for Art Bites.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I had a good time making this, and now I get to eat dinner. I love it when dinner's like ready at the end of one of these. And I'm looking forward to the Sugar Showdown because I don't have to cook for that one. I just get to watch. So I think that'll be fun. I'm only bummed that I don't get to actually sample stuff afterwards. So, but that should be an exciting one. So thanks for having me again tonight.
Thank you. That is going to be so much fun this weekend, 1 p.m. Don't miss it. Sugar Showdown. We're going to have a bunch of bakers going head to head, and Jennifer, our culinary curator, will be hosting that. So we're very excited to welcome you back this Saturday, May 11th, for our next Art Bites. I want to say thank you to all my viewers tonight. I hope you've been inspired to place that next grocery order to add in a bunch of asparagus.
Yep.
For the next time you hop over to your local grocer. Don't go by too quickly when you see the asparagus aisle. Maybe take a second glance now that you've got this fun recipe under your belt. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you enjoyed tonight's show of Art Bites, please consider making a donation. I've put a link in the chat. We can't do these programs and events without you. And Jennifer, thank you so much. We'll see you Saturday.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you Saturday.